So the big question is this. How do you take $42,000 in assets in a one TrackMan bay facility in the back of a CrossFit gym and turn it into a 12 bay, 17,000 square foot training facility in just a few years? That's the question, and this is the podcast that's going to give you the answer. Welcome to Inside the Room on Stock Shot Secrets. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Stock Shot Secrets. I am Kyle Morris. Obviously, I should remember my name. I'm Kyle Morris. This is
Carson Stone.
So Carson is the very first instructor that I ever hired, the first employee. Technically, I guess it wasn't firstly an employee or a 1099, which was a whole thing in itself that we could go to and talk about that whole interchange of 1099s for W-2s. But this guy has been here from the beginning, like the OG of TGR. It was basically you, me, and Leslie, and we were trying to figure this thing out. So, and I remember the first time we'll go back to this and we'll kind of cycle through the story a little bit. But the first time when I got Carson, right, went to apply because we were booming at TGR. We had one bay at the time, getting ready to build a second, and I put a job application out. We talked on the phone, and you're like, yeah, I think I'm just going to drive up there tomorrow. And I'm like, what do you mean drive up? Aren't you in South Carolina? You're like, yeah, I'm just going to drive up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is a hero. So, but what were you driving up for? Where were you? Well, I guess let's go back in the story. Tell all the listeners like a little bit about you and your history. So where are you originally from? Because they'll notice a little bit of twang in your voice.
Yep. So you can hear the Kentucky. So I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. In that moment, I was on a hurricane evacuation. So I was living in Hilton Head, and I was teaching at Harbour Town, and we had just had Hurricane Matthew.
Which they just had the tournament there yesterday, or 2 days ago.
Yeah, literally Sunday. Yeah, JT, another Kentucky guy.
Yeah.
So
it
was really sad, too, because the U.S. just won the Ryder Cup, and Davis Love had just opened a brand-new golf course. We had this whole thing, and all that got canceled with Hurricane.
Oh, man.
So, but I came back to Lexington, and I saw that you had posted a job, and I knew I was teaching, but I wasn't teaching in a community. So it was really cool, and I saw that, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to drive up, and so we hung out for the day. And
so you're down there teaching, because I want to go a little bit into this, because if there's probably anybody, I was saying this to you the other day, if there's anyone in the world, aside from maybe like Mike Bender, right? If there's anyone that teaches as similar as I do, it's probably you. So we could probably talk shop for hours, but I want to know a little bit. So when you're down there, you were working beside Tim. What was Tim's last name?
Tim Cook. So
Tim Cook, right?
He's a Golf Digest top 100. Yeah. Really great, accomplished coach.
So what were some of the things that you saw as a coach or learned as a coach from Tim that kind of like as you continued to grow in your craft and kind of like help lay the foundation? Because the job at Sea Island, was that your first job that you had as an instructor?
Yeah, so that was basically my first introduction to teaching, where I really kind of fell in love and knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came from, my failures as a player, and so I sought Tim out and had the opportunity to learn, and, just he was working with a lot of better players and the way he structured practice, and he was one of the first guys with the swing catalyst and some of the force plates and some of that stuff. So it was a good learning opportunity for sure.
Was there anything that he did that was like, or that you guys were doing down there that seemed, I don't know, I guess the catalyst I was going to say that seemed ahead of its time, but like, that he was doing with practicing at Sea Island? Like, was there a junior academy down there? Was it just more like, weekend warriors that were coming in, the kind of flying in to play Harbour Town, and you would work with them, or were they local guys?
Yeah, so he started out at a course right next to Sea Pines, Long Cove, and so he kind of had a small little group of about 10 college players, and he would structure their practice and kind of basically, so he would only work, if you were a competitive junior golfer.
Gotcha.
And he did a lot of the things that set the foundation for my beliefs, and and then obviously, I took the leap and came to Dublin, Ohio, and that changed the foundation and taught me how to teach. So it's been good.
So now cycling in even before Harbour Town, right? You had said a little bit about your college and like junior golf background. Growing up in Lexington, what about like college? Was there college golf? Playing college golf? What was your junior golf's development like? What was that story?
Thanks for asking. So I was really late to the game. I didn't start playing golf until high school. So I was all about baseball growing up. And, an undersized, third baseman that had an arm injury. And I couldn't play baseball anymore because I couldn't throw to first base. I tried to go to second base, couldn't throw from there either. So,
and it'd be weird if you threw with the other hand.
Yeah, that was just not an option. So I was kind of down and out. And my dad was a huge golfer. But, like, up until that point, I never wanted to golf. And, once I quit baseball, I started golfing every day for 4 years, and then went and played college for about a year and a half.
Where was that at?
So I played at a small school in Georgetown, and then I transferred to Eastern Kentucky, and I ended up doing a PGA program. And
nice.
So, yeah, I graduated.
Did you play in the
there.
PGA? Did they have PGA programs what do they call? Like the PGA, like club golf? Did they have that back then?
No, it wasn't so much that. It was the golf management. So you did your PGA accreditations. We had some tournaments and stuff like that. But, yeah, so.
What's your take now, being a PGA guy, on, like, the development of the coach? Like, if you were giving advice, now being wise amongst your years, right? And you had a young player who was 22 years old, and he looks at you and he's like, man, like a Gabe, right? Like Gabe wants to be a PGA guy, or not a PGA guy. He wants to be an instructor, right? That's like one of his things. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if Gabe was at the table and you were like, because there might be some listeners that are thinking about it, right? Mm-hmm. And he goes, I want to be you, Carson. Like, I don't want to run a club. I don't want to be like working at a shop. I want to be teaching golf. Would you have still done PGA, or would you, I'm just kind of curious, or would you have said, hey, actually just travel around 3 or 4 years and live out of your van and just go watch the best instructors teach and be a sponge?
So I would say the latter. In an ideal world, I think there is some value. And PGA for me was good because it allowed me to build some structure in my life, which I probably needed.
Yep.
But the latter, I think, what my advice would be is invest in yourself. Go, like you said, go take a lesson from a top coach. Go spend some time. Go watch somebody who's doing what you want to do, and then, learn and pick up from what you can observe.
And you still do that now, right? Like one of the things that I love about you is the fact that you are continually learning. You 100%. Love feedback and training aids as much as I do. Might have even more of them.
We're on the same level.
Right. So who are some of the instructors that through your journey, right, obviously you learned originally under Tim, but who are some of the other instructors that you can think of off the top of your head that, one, you've gone and shadowed for a day or two, and then maybe some of those key nuggets that when you look back on your visit, right, you go, hey, like, that was kind of a cool piece of advice, or I didn't think about that, or that was enlightening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say, I've been fortunate and, through different, whether it's the PGA show, or just, taking a golf lesson or going and watch, like, I've been around, most of the names that, are notable names. I'd say, obviously you influenced my teaching, tenfold, right? So like how I structure a lesson and, having those moments with the student. Mark Blackburn has been very influential. John Tattersall, recently I've spent some time with him. Scott Hamilton, Mike Bender. But I think a lot is that, when you're developing your own teaching style, you can learn how to structure a lesson, how to communicate, when to, a lot of times it's easy if you have a lot of information, but, when to share that information. Mitch, I learned a ton the other day just watching him out there, giving some short game stuff in the rough and different, just the way to articulate it, I think, is huge.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of it is kind of, even when we were down at Academy Cup the other week, and I think this even goes to like just the players of you guys just trying to get better, is that take course management, for example, and it kind of related back to coaching, but like the goal is like when you're going through these 4 questions of course management, like how's my lie? Where do I want to land it? What's the loft and what club, right? So lie, land, loft, club. It's like you're taking in all of this information, and it seems like a lot, and it is. It's like you got all the puzzle pieces on the table, right? But then, or all these different ingredients. But then what you're trying to do is through these questions that you're doing, you're trying to dilute it down to its simplest form in basically one word. So you've got all the elements and like the lie and the grain and it's uphill, downhill, side hill, like into the wind, front pin, blah, 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 yada, yada. And you got all this stuff. And then it comes to the end. It's like, it's a 9-iron at the tree. Right? But
Sure.
you know that the 9-iron at the tree is it. And it's the same idea, which you do such a great job of taking all, because of you continuing learning and how smart you are, like you take all of the stuff that you got in the golf swing and then all of the different moving pieces. And as the consultant, quote, air quotes, if you guys can't see my air quotes, as the consultant, you can essentially dilute that down to its simplest form to make the greatest impact.
100%.
Right? So like yesterday, Asha was like a great example, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
this girl's shallow, like her hands kind of run out, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so she's got to like do this thing. It's like, yeah. So it's like, you know, we could be like, hey, we need you to like, because she's a lefty. It's like, we need you to post into your right foot, kick your right hip back, ground force, pull it back, rip your arms more right, hold it, make sure your right arm doesn't bend, like manage the face, make sure the face is square to the spine. But then you go, or you could just turn your left hand just like a 1/4 inch to the right.
Yeah. Simple cues,
like,
right?
And it's like, and that
Simple
probably
cues.
would, the brain is very inactive of the face, of the club face. So it's like, that probably would do it. You know what I'm saying? So, and you do a really, really good job of that just by all of the, we'll say the IP that you have sitting in your brain of learning all that stuff. So what about when you went to like, was there any takeaways? Because you spent a lot of time with Mark Blackburn and he's, you know,
Well,
many could argue he might be the best teacher in the game right now, right? What are some things that you learned from Mark?
Well, the biggest thing is I think that, you know, I remember being in the Teaching and Coaching Summit, and he did a presentation, and that was a big reason why I sought him out and went down there is that, you know, back to your point, is he created like a decision tree. So he had like a blueprint, and it's like, okay, well, you know, I look at this golf swing, and there's a ton of different ways that I could go, but it's like being very, you know, coordinated in what's going to have the biggest impact early on. And, you know, somebody like Butch Harmon or some of these great coaches, you know, like David Ledbetter or whoever, I think they have a history of, you know, making a small, profound statement that, you know, changed a lot, right? And
Right.
one thing fixes others. And so Mark just was very organized in his golf lesson, very structured. And like I go back, you know, I try to have a decision tree is like, okay, you know, and a lot of it's a foundation, you know, tilts and turns, you know,
Yeah.
what do we start with?
Right. So for us, like I know for those that have been in TGR and you're working with Carson and you're lucky enough to do so, like that's what you guys, for his decision tree that he's talking about. For our decision tree, it's basically the banners, right? So like
The banners.
you got like banner 2 talking about alignment, grip, posture, setup, right? And then it goes into your backswing of your tilt, turn and hinge, your follow through or your transition, shift, drive, pivot, snap, and then your follow through, turn, match, and fold. But there's no point in working on the snap release if your alignment is ratchet.
100%.
So it's kind of understanding, and I think that's where if you guys and girls who are listening, like if you could understand and memorize those 10 words of like tilt, turn, hinge, shift, drive, pivot, snap, turn, match, and fold. Tilt, turn, hinge, shift, drive, pivot, snap, turn, match, and fold. I would have said it slower.
Banner.
Then you just basically, when you're going through film, you can diagnose what is the piece that I'm missing. Okay, like is the alignment. Okay, those things are good. Then it's like, okay, am I turning? You know, do I have enough depth?
Cause and effect, right?
Cause and effect, right? And then knowing how to do that. So, okay, so now let's kind of fast forward. So now you come up to TGR, right? Now,
Yeah.
TGR has changed a ton. I mean,
To say the
exponentially,
least.
to say the least. So when Carson came in, I had
Just
basically
me, you, and a bay.
me, you, and a bay. It looked sweet. Now looking back, it looked like a homeless shelter.
I mean, it was pretty. It was awesome
Yeah.
when we came up.
Did I have the second bay built by the time you got
we
there?
finished it. Like I was there.
Oh, that's right. You helped me put the carpet on the walls
Yes.
with the ladders.
Yeah, we had the back room in the kitchen, and
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I had the one bay in 2016 in January where I plugged in the projector and opened the facility as the customers were coming in.
yeah,
Then fast forward about 8 months, I'm growing. I build another bay. I have to hire another coach. You come in. Then we build the third bay. Then the sixth bay. We undergo COVID, which was COVID, right? That was kind of a
Sure.
hot mess for everybody. But it's kind of, and then kind of transforming that story into after 2020.
at the end of 2020.
At the end of 2020, you kind of have a go-getting moment, right? I don't know what would be the right adjective.
I think it's just a lot, where I was in my life, just in my later 20s, kind of mid-20s, I had the opportunity to kind of move home. It was good for me to kind of reconnect in the community that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And, so I went back there and started an academy and, with a lot of like what I learned at TGR in mind. So,
and the academy was great. It was basically the version of the 2020 TGR, which was kind of like ours was 6 bays.
Yeah.
Excuse me. 6 bays, 7,000 square feet. Was yours? How big was yours?
It was a industrial warehouse. It was 10,000 square feet. We had 7 TrackMan bays, a gears, force plate. Just a good training facility through the indoor. Right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, and it's still there. It's pretty good. It's got to be the best indoor spot in Kentucky that has to offer. So technology and everything.
What were some of the good? So now shifting, you go from being a golf coach, teaching beside me, right? And then at that time we had hired Mitch, which was in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17 and 18, I think.
Might have been 18. Because I had been there for almost, I think he came after almost 2 years I had been there.
I don't think I would have had 3 instructors with 3 bays, so it must have been 18, because 18 was the
because we did the second one.
Yeah, where we gave lessons with the concrete floor.
I remember that.
And we'd hit it in the net, and then it would bounce back to the mat.
I wasn't thinking about that till you brought it up. Yeah, I do remember.
With
that
the golf room, we were refilming, we were redoing because we had all the thing. But I refused to close the business.
Yeah.
For the least amount of time. So there was basically like 10 to 14 days where we just put a mat in the middle of a concrete floor, and then the screens were still up, so you'd hit in the screen, and then it would bounce back and hopefully hit the mat.
No golfer left behind. No matter what, we got you.
Yeah. So, so going down there, what were some of the lessons that you learned in regards to like being a business owner, right? Because that's a much, much different hat than a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good learning opportunity. I think there's a lot of things, just trying your hand at it and different things. There's, it's tough to answer that question, I guess, but there's a lot of things that you don't think about until after the fact, right?
Right.
You have to react to, right? It's tough to plan or prep for certain things. And then it's like, okay, well, this happened. How are you going to respond?
Right. Hey, guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. So did you, in regards of doing it, I guess, did you do first with that stuff, like with bay design? Did you come up with, were you like me when the original renditions were like, you were having to basically YouTube how big a bay design should be, what projectors should I use? Oops.
No, fortunately,
or did you outsource it?
No, so I mean, obviously, TrackMan has their recommendations, right?
Yep.
But a lot of it. So when I first moved, I'll tell you this: when I first moved down to Kentucky, I went to a standalone driving range before we did our indoor facility, and so we had just a teaching bay, just like you see on a back of a range where you hit out of it onto it, and just by chance, it worked out to where. I thought about building out this building and trying to maximize the space. But then after second thought, I was like, you know what? Let's just have 2 really big bays. And so I had 2 bays that were like 25 feet by 25 feet. So I was like, so that was going from, what were the dimensions at the original TGR?
18,
were they like
18?
Yeah. Which was big.
Yeah, 18 is a really big bay.
18 is a big bay. Well, what were the
smallest one in bay 2 was 15.5, which is that's a tiny bay.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the one I remember a little bit.
Yeah,
and just so I went from like a smaller one to like the Rolls Royce, like 25 feet.
Yeah,
and haven't looked back. So when I was building it out, I was trying to, and I think it was even some of the proponent group stuff we went to. It's just like, okay, don't try to maximize space as much as like. Give yourself a little bit of extra room for when you put stuff in there. Right?
I think it's one of those things too that bay. You're always trying to like I mean, it's a podcast in itself, but like you're always trying to maximize, the amount of bays that you can get in a facility. 'Cause,
sure.
like more bays equals more money.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're sacrificing like customer enjoyment to where, there's nothing worse than like standing in a bay and you're worried that the driver's going to hit the television.
Yeah. And
You know what I mean? And then you got like you're feeling like you're swinging like T-Rex arms and all that stuff, and trying not to hit the net above you and all that kind of stuff. So
you don't plan for the 7-footer that walks in and swings the club. It's like, well,
I don't have to worry about that problem, and I don't think you do either.
Well, that's because you got the massive bay now, right?
Right. I only think that
Bay 10 can handle anybody.
Yeah. Although everybody seems like they're 7 feet to me. So, anyway, so you're down at Kentucky Bluegrass Academy, right? Or Bluegrass Academy down there. That's late 2020, 21 to basically 2 months ago. So
2 months ago,
which was very interesting because for you guys that don't know, like the golf room is blowing up. Like it's just, I can't hire instructors fast enough, essentially, but I'm very, very particular on who I hire. So I end up looking online and just kind of checking in on you, like on Instagram, and I'm like, like I don't see anything going on at like Bluegrass. So out of the blue, I forget where I was.
I think you were skiing.
I was with Leslie, right? We were in Park City on the worst trip ever.
And we just texted and connected.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, and you're like, hey, man, let's talk. So long story short, like you call and you go, hey, like I'm kind of like in between spots, which now kind of puts us to your journey at TaylorMade Kingdom as a fitter, right? Which was really cool, quite frankly, because that's like if you're going to say like, what's the place in America to go fit? That's probably top 3 or 4.
At least.
You know what I mean?
We're building clubs off the tour van. Yeah.
Right. So tell me about your experience as, and then we'll get into you kind of cycling back into TGR, and then we can talk a little bit of shop, and then we'll finish up. But like, tell me about your experience as an expert like fitter at the Kingdom at TaylorMade down in in Callaway Gardens, right?
Well, no, it's just outside of Atlanta in Greensboro, Georgia, basically. And it was just an opportunity to learn, so with my academy in Kentucky, after, I started teaching in 2015, when I went to Harbour Town, and I've kind of over the years really found out that, where I get a lot of joy is, helping, competitive junior golfers, just especially because I feel like it's more than golf that we're coaching, especially at our academy and certain things. And so, with my facility in Kentucky, I saw that, we were maybe not going to invest in our junior program as much as we had. So, I had the opportunity so I sold that, and then I had the opportunity to go to Georgia. My best friend from college was the facility coordinator and was in charge of the Kingdom, and said, hey, why don't you come down? We'll, learn some fitting, build off the tour trucks, teach. And, so I took that opportunity, and there were some cool people. I got to connect with Kenny Perry, Kirk Cousins of the Falcons, different stuff. Yeah. And, Ron DeSantis came flying through there, so you just, we had some small mini tour players. Chris Kirk is a local guy there. Yeah. And so it was really cool to kind of see.
Did you get to fit DeSantis or one of the?
I didn't fit DeSantis, but I was right there. So one of our head club builders fit it, but I was out there on the tee with him, and it was cool to just go out and have the conversation. And Kirk Cousins, I fit several of the Falcons coaches and stuff, and some mini tour players, and it's just interesting to see when you're at that level. We had a lot of University of Georgia, high-level college players, and like to your point, what is the club, how does that impact the golf swing? And to see those minute changes, like moving weight around, the lie angles and stuff like that, it all adds up.
What about for the recreational player, right? Like you got the weekend where the truck flies in from Utah.
I think they should get fit.
Like what are some of the things? What is the biggest misconception that you would see that change them the most, right?
So,
like whether it's
a great point, right? I think, at least my opinion is that most people say, well, let me work on my golf swing before I get fit. I was like, well, if you're 12 years old and you're growing like a weed, maybe that makes sense. But like as an adult, get fit now. Like make the game easier. It's already hard, right? So, like you're not just going to all of a sudden, go get a bunch of golf lessons and just have some radical different fitting. I think if you go get fit, like what's your speed, how what the lie angles. Those might change a little bit, but they'll help you right off the get-go.
Yeah, I think that over the last year, the kick that I've been on a lot, which you've kind of actually seen in person with some of the academy kids since you've been back for a month or so, is there's something to be said about like the weight of a club for sure, especially for junior golfers, right?
Yeah.
But if you're just talking about the normal 45-year-old guy, right? Like certainly the difference in a shaft weight for an iron of 115 grams versus 105 versus 130, like those things make a difference. The one though I think that makes the biggest difference, that it's so easy to fix and so I guess overlooked by the recreational player, are lie angles.
Yeah.
Especially because like if you have a guy who's like kind of steep and he's looking at a club that's built 2 degrees upright, like it's like the brain just intuitively knows that that's what I need to do. And so it's like it just promotes this thing coming over the top, like early extending, raising your hands up. And it's almost like my take is always, like I always tell our guys, if you come to get fit and your lie angles are 3 degrees upright, we're not selling you clubs, man. Why?
And
Because you suck.
It's funny you said that because
You need lessons, bro.
so that would be the one point to where like, and I saw some cool stuff at the Kingdom, like, for example, like, we use TrackMan in every lesson, right? So if I look at attack angle, right, okay, I want to be more efficient with your attack angle, get more distance in certain things. Well, it was eye-opening to me a lot of times, just seeing how people responded, So, for example, I'd see somebody with, maybe something that's too heavy and really firm at the tip, and, okay, they're hitting 2 down.
Right.
Well, no swing cues or no lesson, and then we switch the shaft, get it a little bit more kick or get, some bend in the handle, whatever it might be, and the lie angle, or the attack angle, went from 2 down to 2 up.
Yeah.
And, that was eye-opening to me because I would sit there as a coach. If somebody ever came into my bay, I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, well, let's, because most people want to work on their driver. Yeah. Let's figure something out.
Yeah.
And I think just, back to the decision tree is like, okay, well, do I need to change that if I can just maybe make this more efficient and see how you respond to something different? And I think, the fitting system, Klinger does an amazing job. I would encourage people to come in and just see how you respond to different things because, if I get something that's really firm in the handle or, really soft in the midsection, like I got to figure out what am I going to hit in the center more often. And, that's where, the shaft, I think, makes a massive difference. And
I think that what's so cool about your story, and then we'll kind of get into you coming back to TGR, but like what's so cool about your story is that, and I kind of posed this to as a discussion internally with a meeting, but I was saying this to the guys, maybe this is like 6 months or a year ago. I was like, hey, like, I say it to our online guys, I'm like, are you guys coaches or are you guys instructors?
Yeah.
And then we talk about it in dialogue. Because I think what's so cool about your story is like you're the epitome of a coach. You're not an instructor. Like, so when you are in a bay and you're chilling in bay 4 at TGR, right? Like you're looking at this player through the lens of like 7 different hats, right? Like you're looking at the lens of obviously an instructor and seeing the X's and O's and reading the data. And, then we didn't even get into gears and all the data of the body, which we probably could get into really quickly as well. But like you're looking at it through that, you're looking at it as a competitive player and understanding course management. We also could get into the fact of you going to see Vision 54 and spending a time about there and understanding the human skills. Yeah. Right. So like you understand that whole mental side of the game and like paying attention to an intention and like focusing on the right thing when you're over the golf ball. You have the ability to look at the golf swing through the lens of basically an expert fitter fitting at, more about golf clubs than I do. So you have a lens that I just hit them. Right. So you got
There's some value to that too, though.
So you can look at it through that whole piece, right? So like you've got a very, very robust understanding of the human being and who they are, and you can see like a really good consultant, you can see like what knob do I need to twist and dilute down to its simplest form to therefore get the highest ROI for the time that this guy has.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's like there's really no, to the point going back to like the Gabe analogy or like doing going to PGA of America school or whatever it may be, but the only way to do that is experience.
Yeah, you got to invest in yourself and go learn, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can tell that we like golf, right? Like, so if I didn't love
important.
the game, right? A lot of this, and a lot of what I've done, I probably sought out in a selfish, like for my own game, and then after years realized, hey, I've got the opportunity to help other people get more joy out of this, and I think you found the same thing, a little servant leadership, which is really what I think we're called to do.
Yeah, amen. All right, so now you're at the Kingdom. Mm-hmm. I'm getting ready to go down to the national championship to watch Ohio State dominate.
Yeah, that worked out.
That worked out well. So you call Park City. You're like, hey, like I'm down here. TaylorMade's great. It's been an amazing thing, but like I like fitting, but it's not like where my true calling, where God's put on my heart to like what I should do.
Yeah,
which was really invest into junior golf and junior development. That's kind of where you're.
Well, the academy, right? I think the academy that at the golf room and the facility at the golf room is second to none. And I think the stuff, what I've always loved about you is that, like, okay, hey, even if this doesn't work out, like, I'm going to try it. And I'm willing to sit here and say, look, if it's going to help these kids get better, let's at least present the information and see if, and I think that a lot of people, look at Bryson. Like, I'm sitting there, he does that all day long, and he gets ridiculed for it all the time. But it's like, the dude's willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And if it's in the better interest of helping somebody else, like, and, the academy you guys have done an amazing job, and I'm very grateful to just be back a part of it. But, like, the structure, the program, the workouts with Lindsay, like, it all goes into it. Sean with it's a cool thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're coming back to TGR. Like, what are some of the things, seeing all of the stuff, like, and for the, I guess, and we can kind of sign off after this, although I do kind of want to get into gears a little bit to see if there were some things some learning that you had with that or discoveries. But what are some things coming back and traveling all over the world, seeing all these different instructors, right? And this isn't about, like, the golf room by design is not really me anymore. The golf room is the golf room. Mm-hmm. I happen to just work at the golf room. But it used to, like when it was just us, it was like the Carson Kyle show. Now it's the golf room's its own thing, right?
Yeah.
So, but what is it that when you've come back, that you go, hey, like this place, if someone's going to come see you and they're going to come fly to Columbus to see you, or they're going to be in Columbus to see you, or they're going to they want to have a junior golfer to come work in academy to be with you. But like, what are some of the things that you go, hey, this is how TGR is different, because I've experienced these other things, but this is kind of what makes this stand apart, which is why kind of what made me want to come back.
Yeah, and I think it's back to what I just said about, the willingness. I love the golf room because, if you come in here and it's not like you're just going to get a quick tip. Like, we're going to develop you over the time, right? And, it's not easy. Right, like getting better at golf is not for the faint of heart, because like it takes some time and effort, and if you're gonna put that time and effort, you have to have the practice habits that match that, to where, like you said, you get a good return on your investment.
Yeah,
and a good friend of mine who just had some success on the Corn Ferry and is a local legend in Kentucky, Josh Teeter, and so I got to hang out with Josh and play some golf, and he would come into our facility and practice, and you know how you set those two alignment sticks out?
Right, the zone pulse.
Zone pulse, right? So in the history of my life, I've never seen a golfer just come out and set the zone poles. And the first thing that Josh did, and like nobody made him do this, but he just walked out there, had his TrackMan, put 2 zone poles, and spent the hour practicing through that.
Nice.
And it was awesome. And, it was just really cool to see that observation. And it's like, if you're, good players have traits. And, even if you're an amateur and you're just getting, golf's intimidating and you hear all this information, well, how do you go back to the decision tree, decipher it all out, and say, okay, well, these things are going to have the biggest impact on what I do? Yeah. And I think that the golf room is elite at helping people make those decisions.
Yeah, I think the beauty, like even to Josh's point, is like, and then I do want to talk a little bit about gears really quick, but like, excuse me. But one of my favorite quotes is a guy by Tony Robbins. You know Tony Robbins?
Yeah, yeah.
You ever listen to Tony?
I do. Yeah.
And he's like, if you ever want to achieve greatness, like rather than try to like create something brand new off the cuff, just model what everyone does, right?
Yeah.
So I think the beauty is that we're not really inventing a new way of doing it. We're just a bunch of nerds. We've studied a bunch, and we go, great. Here's the culmination of what they all do, diluted down to its simplest form, and
100%.
this is what they all do, right? Like, this is how they practice, and this is what their hand plane does, and this is what their body does. So, so one thing I did want to know, so if you guys aren't, there's to talk a little bit of tech really quick for those who are listening. They're like, hey, I want to really get in the nerd stuff. I like the nerd stuff, right? So when you got Gears, so Gears is like basically like what we have at the golf room. It's the Sportsbox AI, right? So Gears or Sportsbox AI does it with just cameras. Gears, you got to put some sensors on it, so on and so forth. But what are some things that you noticed, I guess, if on the recreational amateurs, right, of like the two big things, right? So if you were going to give some lessons, you've given quite a bit of lessons, I imagine, on Gears and seen a bunch of data, and you go, if I were to be listening to the tens of thousands of people that are listening to this, my hunch would say that 90% of you players who are of handicaps of 5 to 20, you probably do this. You probably do these two things based upon my observation, right? So we know, for example, like if someone was going to come into the golf room, we go, the guy walks in the front door, Carson, we're like, what do you think this guy's swings look like? We go, he probably goes shallow going back, steep coming down, stalls on his back foot, and flips.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I would probably say in terms of how the pelvis moves.
I was going to say that as one too.
And that to me, like when I'm watching like just, the 12 banners, right? And I'm looking at somebody, like if I'm trying to fix their downswing, but, they have a really poor tilt in their pelvis and the body, like, that's not dynamic motion, right? That's not how we move athletically. It was eye-opening to me that, how the pelvis moved and how early in the backswing people were going back to their lead foot.
Yeah.
And so there's a really change of direction versus I see a lot of, amateur golfers, and rightfully so, right? You go into your trail foot, you get more power potentially, you get a lot of things, but, we're not all PGA Tour players are training their body at the elite level. Like they're good athletes at this day and age. They're able to move back very early.
And quickly.
Right. And another thing to that, not to interrupt, but like I see a lot of trail arm bend. I hear a lot of times like keep the left arm straight, and I'm like, and then I see this right arm just like collapsing down.
And I can keep my left arm straight, but I have no width. So that width is really created from that that right.
That was a lot of things. Is Gears was measuring right arm bend and different things, and pelvis and how the pelvis kind of moved. Very early it would move away. Very little, but then it would have a lot of move back.
Yeah, and you hear the amateur golfer a lot of times. So, like, if you guys think about your belt buckle, right? So, essentially, if your belt buckle's at 0, then as you kind of slightly take it back, it moves about a half an inch to an inch to basically like left arm parallel. But then, like, by the time you get to impact, that your belt has moved 6 inches towards the target, and you had a lot of amateur golfers who are like, "What? You're supposed to sway?" And you're like, "Well, you're supposed to." I guess if you want to say, you're supposed to sway towards the target in the downswing. You don't want to sway in the backswing, but like maybe just a little bit if you want to be technical. But like there's definitely some lateral shift, a lot of it towards the target, right?
And how early is it, right? Like
yeah.
Rory and John Rahm, for example, looking at their Gears data, is that as the clubs kind of just barely pass their pocket or like where you said P2, okay, well, they've ripped that club back, right? Like they've initiated.
They're pulling it out of the ground.
And then right about here, like they're rerouting it.
Right. Which is why their backswing is shorter.
Yeah.
So a lot of players, to your point, they're like they move to the amateur golfer, and this one's definitely going on Instagram, so you guys can hear this one. The reason your backswing is long is because exactly what he just said, which is the fact that you don't move to your lead side early enough. So therefore, you keep turning, whereas if you just move to your lead side, that would shorten the backswing, change in direction, because the club has to go the other direction. And guess what? That would create lag.
It would all happen.
sway. All right. So that's awesome. So we got the pelvic sway, and then the second one you were saying was the right arm bend, right?
Well, it was just crazy to me because, like Rory, for example, you don't see high-level golfers that bend more than 90 out of that, right? So they're not getting a ton of trail arm bend.
Right.
And, most of us, we're right-handed. So, I think a lot of issues, just my beliefs, is that, a lot of people are just naturally stronger with their right hand. So it just takes over.
Yep.
And it just like brings that club coming back.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay. And so I don't like to see, a ton of bend here to where the club gets in interference and creates lack of space.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, that's awesome, man. So I'm so thankful that you're back. You're back
grateful.
home. I know everybody is super excited. The coaches are excited. The staff is excited. Players are excited. We're excited to have you back home. So thank you so much. And if anybody does want to get in touch with you or learn more about your story or maybe a social media handle or anything, is there anything that you would like to point them to?
Well, I mean, I just am Stonehenge Golf, right, on Instagram, and that's all I got.
Cool. And if you guys ever want to come visit the golf room, see Carson, just give us a call and we'll help you out.
It's good to be back. I mean, it's awesome to see. I mean, I think Columbus and Dublin, I mean, there are some passionate golfers, right? Like this is an underrated golf city, and it's a good place, and it is home at this point. So I'm very happy, grateful to be back.
All right. Well, thank you, Carson. All right. We'll see you guys back here for another episode of Stock Shot Secrets. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. I want to invite you, the business owner who would like to learn how to scale your revenue to make more money inside your business. I want to invite you to Columbus. Spend a few days with me where I show you everything that we do at the golf room to build our business to go from like 1 bay to 2 bays and then 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, 4 to 6 and 6 to 12, and now the largest player development facility in America. I'm going to show you everything we have, basically give you the franchise code, if you will, on how we go about our business. So I want to invite you to learn more about it. Just go to thegolfroom.com/business-coaching, and you can learn all about this process and see if it's a good fit for you. And hopefully I see you soon in Columbus, Ohio.